far as I'm concerned, leftovers are the best part of Christmas. I mean, I really don't know why everyone makes such a fuss. I love that reassuring feeling of having the house sort of filled with food, ready to eat, at a moment's notice. And, far from dreading that recurring turkey, I live for it. Anyway, I don't want to do a big production number every day, and the whole point of this time of year is you don't need to. I mean, there's always something there in the fridge to eat, and you just need to add one thing. I don't know, a lovely hot pudding or some sort of easy starter. And this soup is a kind of real standby of mine. It's a lentil and chestnut soup that I had for the first time at the Caprice so many years ago, and they've long stopped having it on their menu. I still make it. Start off with some vegetables mished up in the processor. There's just a leek, a carrot, an onion and a stick of celery here. And should you have any goose fat in the house, then use that to soften the vegetables in place of the oil. And then when the vegetables are softened, add the red lentils, these lovely little split ones, about 250 grams. Then stir so that they get absorbed into that soft tangle of vegetable. Then about 1.5 litres water. Some vegetable stock. I mean, use whatever stock you want. These just need to cook now, just so they begin to disintegrate into the liquid, and it gives a kind of wonderful creamy sludge. I mean, because this is a starter doesn't mean to say that I feel it's the sort of first course in a processional dinner, and I certainly don't mean that. The whole thing about soup is that it's kind of relaxing food. I mean, what I want is to be able to sort of sit on the sofa watching television with a mug of soup and just a really fat stuffed turkey sandwich. Look, the lentils have cooked into this glorious kind of yellow sludge. And these lentils are the original biblical mess of pottage, just so you know. So I'm just going to add these chestnuts. Can you see how lovely and soft these ones are? Which means they'll dissolve so easily into the soup. Now these just need, I would say, 10 minutes at most. And they'll have softened a bit. And then they can just go straight into the blender and be blitzed into a wonderful, creamy, velvety emulsion. Now, there's enough really here for 4 to 6, but one of the wonderful things about soup is that you can just make a whole batch up and eat it yourself as and when you want. I mean, I like to make more leftovers, not fewer. So what I need now is a good retro swirl cream. Parsley, just sprinkle over, and that is it. Christmas is all about traditions. I mean, even in really small ways. I mean, for instance, I cannot have a turkey sandwich without mango chutney in it. Now, mayonnaise, okay, maybe even some cold bread sauce, but it has to be this mango chutney. Exactly the same labels I remember from my childhood, even though I never eat it any other time of the year. But I think, it makes sense to keep other pickles, like these hot ones, really something spicy with oomph, because cold turkey I love, but it hasn't got lots of flavour, which makes it actually a very good base for all spicy food. And I love some Indian spiced potatoes with it, panch poraloo, and I keep all the spices for this in one little handy container, although I now see it says best before March 1998. I think we can rid ourselves of that one. So much for efficiency. Now the potatoes for the panch poraloo, which is potatoes and whole spices, have been chopped and peeled, about 1 kilo of them. And what I want to do first is just get some oil in a non-stick pan, because then you can use less oil. And the lovely thing about this with the potatoes and whole spices basically is that it's quite a dry dish, like some of those Indian ones are. Okay, I'm going to lower in potatoes. just need to be turned in the pan and cooked for about 10 minutes, one half cooked through just as they are. Right, just going to clamp the lid on, turn the heat down a bit and leave that for about 10 minutes. These look wonderfully steamy, beginning to soften a little. Oh, slightly sticking, but nothing too terrible. So, spices. Now I'll start off with just a couple of ground ones, which aren't part of the 5 whole ones. Bit of chili powder. It's about half a teaspoon here, but obviously, it depends how hot you like your food. I have to say, actually, that although I love this with cold turkey, when I'm feeling a bit the worse for wear over Christmas, I like to boost the chili factor and have this with a fried egg. It's nothing better. Okay, some turmeric, which just gives wonderful goldenness. I mean, unbeatable. About the same amount. It's going to turn the potatoes in these. Look how beautiful it is, all that golden ochre. Kind of makes me feel better for a lifetime of being chucked out of the art room at school. Okay, we're getting on to the 5 seeds. Some fresh black mustard seeds. Again, about half a teaspoon of everything. Lovely. Fenugreek, which gives wonderful sourness, because I think that's very important. It's not just heat that matters. Some fennel, very aromatic. Right, cumin, and then, not that I'm egocentric or anything, some Nigella seeds, also sold in Indian shops or in those packets as kalonji. Okay, so just turn the potatoes in these spices. Now these just need another 10 or 15 minutes to cook, in the same as before with the lid on. And when they're ready, it's not just they'll be gloriously golden, but they'll be imbued with really rich, kind of haunting spiciness. Say it's not just at this time of year that I have cranberries in the deep freeze. I can open this thing, I don't know, mid-July, and the place will be littered with stray frozen berries. What I need these for now, for a wonderful kind of heartening pudding, which is, well, it's like a pie made of tender sponge. A layer of sponge, cranberries, and then sponge again. Start off with 50 grams of butter. I've already melted 125 grams here, about half a packet, and that's for the sponge itself. So you can use the berries from frozen and just tip them in with a bit of a stir just to turn them in the butter. And then I need 3 spoonfuls, well, tablespoons of sugar. It's quite a bit of sugar, but the tartness of the fruit really needs it, and that's what I love. I mean, it's a bit like there's rhubarb or brownies. You want that tartness, but tempered with the sugar. These just need to be cooked, not until they're really mushy, but just until they begin to yield their form and ooze wonderful fruity juice. Well, while those cook down, I'm going to get on with the sponge. I mean, this is very, very easy. Because the butter's melted, really you're just going to add this to some flour and sugar and eggs, and that's it. No creaming or anything. Just going to steal a bit of the butter to grease the pan. This is what we call the dog dish at home, but I have to say I love it. It's very old-fashioned for pies and puddings. Okay, so 175 grams self-raising flour. The same of sugar. I got the idea for this recipe from an apple pudding that the Pudding Club do. So as you can imagine, it's not a lightweight concoction, but my feeling is These are feast days, not fast days, and you just have to do what all of us do, which is kind of overeat now and restrain yourself in January, or plan to restrain yourself in January. And then a bit of baking powder, just half a teaspoon. I mean, I know it's self-raising flour, but I want a bit of extra oomph. Okay, that's the dry ingredients done. Going to give another quick stir to the berries. They look so beautiful now. I mean, incredibly glossy and sort of ridiculously red and Christmassy. And so it's just a question of adding just a couple of eggs. It's easier just to break them in a jug first, because then you can really make this like muffins, just the wet ingredients into the dry. A bit of orange oil. If you can't get this, I mean, it's quite easy to find, but if you don't want to make an expedition, just use the zest of an orange. But this is really intensely orangey. Okay, so to the eggs, I'm just going to add the melted butter, slightly cooled now. And then, I mean, this is, very simple. As you can see, just add these wet ingredients to the dry. Lovely colour, got a thick batter here. And this is very simple now. It's just a question of getting the pie dish and a spatula and take half the mixture, just spread it over the bottom of the dish. It does rise as it cooks. You don't want a thick covering. And it cooks slowly, about an hour in a low oven, about gas 360. Then pour on the just popped cranberries. There's too much juice, just leave it out, but a bit is fine. And then top with the rest of the batter. Now I know it looks like there's not enough to cover, and don't worry about that. Just splodge it on and sort of spatch away and cover as much as you can. It doesn't matter about the odd bit that isn't. Right, and now some flaked almonds. Maybe a few more, we can. Generous, it is Christmas after all. And just a bit of demerara sugar for crunch. And that is that. In the oven now, about an hour. Inviting a table full of people round for supper on Christmas Eve might sound completely mad, but I promise you it isn't. I mean, it's a habit I've got into and I love the tradition. Apart from anything else, this dinner is everything Christmas Day isn't. It's relaxed, you don't have to spend hours in the kitchen, and you can just cook, prodding a few things while you talk to your friends, and it kind of sets you up for what is often an ordeal ahead. You know, this is just friendly. It's a way of mellowing. In essence, it's just a simple but greedy feast. Gingered prawns to start with, and then tagliata, which is a fabulous Italian way of cooking steak, and then my snowflake brownies set gloriously, seasonally alight. In fact, I don't know why people don't make brownies more often, because they are ridiculously easy to make, and I have yet to find anyone who can resist them. It's just a question of melting and stirring. First melting, it's 375 grams of unsalted butter, same amount of chocolate, really best quality dark chocolate. Put that on lowish heat. And with the melting underway, I'm going to get on with the stirring. So 6 eggs. I mean, this makes a good, fat, dense, heavy amount, so don't be alarmed at the quantities. It's not that I expect everyone to eat every last brownie tonight. It's just that Well, I think you have to have plenty. And who's going to moan about a leftover brownie? 350 grams of caster sugar, any sugar. And a good hit of pure vanilla extract. Bit of salt, that always offsets anything sweet, just a bit. Right, stir, just to combine. And then 225 grams of plain flour. And then my snowflakes, well, I'll come to that. Okay, this looks just about perfect. So, eggs and sugar in. Ditto flour. You can see how easy this is. And now, against this incredible sort of cocoa intensity, the squidgy interior of these brownies, we have a little snowfall. Some little teeny weeny white chocolate buttons. And these are kind of vanilla rich chunks of whiteness against all this incredible melting darkness. Irresistible. So, I'd give about 25 minutes, no longer at first, in a gas 480 oven. The thing is, you can't have a too squidgy brownie. It can go too dry, and I want these perfect. In it goes. So that's the brownies done, and while they're cooking, I'm just going to get on with the beef and the potatoes. And if it sounds daunting, the idea of sort of preparation in advance, I have to say I'm just going to do about 2 minutes work, and that means I have nothing to do later. Right, this needs to go in a marinade. The way I'm cooking this beef is in a sort of Italian-American hybrid. The cut itself is an American. I want to show it to you. It's a slice, about 4 or 5 centimetres thick across the top of the whole rump. I mean, look at this. Beautiful, isn't it? Real meat. And the way I'm cooking it is Italian. It's called tagliata, from tagliare, to cut. And it's just because I'm going to cook it whole on a griddle and then slice it very, very thinly across on the diagonal. And it has a marinade of some garlic, just 1 clove, just crush it, peel it, stick that back in the bag with it, some peppercorns, some olive oil. I think plastic bags are the best way of marinating. A bit of red wine, vinegar, don't know why people use white wine such a lot, because red wine just gives such lovely flavour in salads as well as in marinades. And an onion. This just needs a little massage to help it on its way. And I mean, if you had time, you could do this 12 hours ahead and just stick it in the fridge, but if you've got half an hour, it's still worth doing. Just leave it in a cool place instead, which I will now do and get on with the potatoes. The potatoes are going to get exactly the same kind of freezer bag and marinade treatment. That's to say, about 1 baking size one per person, unpeeled, just chopped into little cubes in a bag with some garlic infused olive oil and some rosemary, and that's it. Right, so the potatoes are in and they'll need about an hour. The steak is marinating beautifully. Well, the brownies I can forget now until it's time to eat them. And, really for the prawns, I'm not even going to start thinking about cooking them till everyone's arrived and they've had a drink, and more to the point, I've had one as well. I'm all for taking it easy in the kitchen, but I think a little work is in order up here now. And call me obvious, but you can never have too much red at Christmas. Happy Christmas!
Oh, Happy Christmas.
Olivia, I'm going to get started on the prawns. Will you make a jug or two of seasonal bries? This is my version of sea bries, only Christmassy. Do about just under a third of Campari and just over a third of blood orange juice and cranberry juice. They're in the fridge.
Twizzle. Here, everyone, here's a lunch of the seasonal breeze.
Oh, fantastic. And what's in the seasonal breeze?
It's Campari, blood orange juice.
These ginger prawns are very, very simple. It's just a question of slicing some spring onions and some ginger and garlic into kind of spiky shards. Just let these wilt slightly. With garlic, I think it's always better putting it in the pan when the oil is cold and heating up, otherwise they'll just brown straight away. It tastes a bit acrid. Right, so I think this is a 2-spatula job. You can smell the ginger, I mean, the minute it hits the pan. And then just in with these wonderful, plump, juicy prawns. Turn them in this aromatic kind of wonderful oil, and you clamp the lid on for a bit and let them cook. And really, these are quite big, so this lid needs to be on for about 5 minutes. Now you can see, well, that mottled grey has turned to that just incredible coral pink. Give another quick turn. And now just a kind of splosh of dry sherry. I mean, if you had rice wine to hand, use it. Sherry just feels very Christmassy. That's perfect now. You know, the prawns have to just tender, cook through, but wonderfully fleshy. Shake them into a bowl. Take them to the table and eat with really disgustingly large hunks of bread.
Oysters, no.
They're not quite so slimy or silvery.
Am I the only one eating bread? Yes.
It would appear so. What do you think of a prawn on Christmas Eve? Very good.
Right, we're on the home run. All that needs to be done now is to grill this now marinated steak. Hard to say for how long. I like it about 5 minutes on one side and then 2 minutes, but then I like this very underdone. So on there. So while that's cooking, I'm just going to throw some rocket artlessly on this plate. And I know that food fashion victims think that rocket is, just terribly passé, but there is a reason why you eat rocket with tagliatelle, and it's because the pepperiness is so right for that wonderful savouriness of the beef. Just move it a tea light or two, could you?
How do you get the potatoes so crispy?
Just cook them for a long time.